Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Stephen King bonus podcast. This is episode 31, and I have with me today writer Joanne McLean. Hello, Joanne. How are you?
I'm good, Lou. Thanks for having me on.
You're most welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you write?
Well, thank you. Well, my name is Joanne. I use J.P. McLean because Joanne is spelled so many different ways. And I write urban fantasy / supernatural thrillers.
Okay.
And I say slash because there is so much overlap between the two. Best known for my Gift Legacy series, which has 7 books. And each of those books is a standalone that tells a story, a complete story all on its own. But each book builds on the one prior, has the same protagonist. Her name is Emmeline Taylor, and a handful of characters that continue through all the stories. And the 7th book is a companion book, which is a retelling of the first book from a different character's perspective.
Oh, interesting. We'll have to talk about that a little bit more later on. So let's start with how you got to where you are today as a writer. Were you an avid reader growing up?
I wouldn't say I was avid reader until after I finished university, but I've always been a reader. I certainly always had a book on the go.
Okay.
I really liked John Wyndham's Chrysalids, and I think that was on one of my reading lists when I was in grade school. And
okay.
That just stirred my imagination, the whole idea of telekinetic thinking. And and then Frank Herbert's Dune was always a big favorite of mine.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, so I did definitely read. I remember reading Bonfire of the Vanities. I remember Pillars of the Earth because it was such a huge book. And way back when, Valley of the Dolls. Do you remember that one? Jacqueline Suzanne?
Yep.
Those are the ones I read growing up. Bad influences, I'm sure. And then after I finished university, I started reading quite a lot more.
Okay. And what did you go to university for? Was it for writing?
No, actually, it was a business degree. I took a degree in commerce at the University of British Columbia.
Okay.
And some writing courses not writing. I wouldn't say they were writing. They were English courses that you took standard undergrad writing courses. But I've actually learned a lot more about writing from my editors. Editors are the best teachers. Really, really good. As soon as you get your feedback from your editor, well, the first thing you do is you feel like an idiot because you see the things that you've done wrong.
Right.
But you learn so much about what to cut, what to expand on, how to do things properly.
Okay. I'm curious then. So you took a business degree and you finished school. And how did you end up becoming a writer? Was it because you moved to an island and you had nothing else to do, or?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. That is actually part of it. When my husband and I moved to the island, I took about 5 years off of work and traveled with him because he is an engineer. He works in mining. And so we lived in Calgary for one season, very cold for us in Calgary for one winter.
Yeah.
And then we spent 5 years in the South. So we spent 1 year in a little town in Mexico, another winter in the Baja, the Mexican Baja, and then 3 winters in Arizona. We were in Tucson for 3 years. And so when we got home after that, here on the West Coast, it's known as the wet coast. And so the first winter when we settled back in, I was looking out the window and thinking, oh my gosh, I got a whole winter of this to go through, the rain and the wind and the howling, and thought as my husband was watching a hockey game, what am I going to do to keep myself from going stir crazy? And so I had been reading a ton of urban fantasy and supernatural thriller books. And I have this recurring dream where I fly. And so a lot of people have that dream, I know, but mine, they're so vivid and so real. So I just thought, I'm going to try to write that scene. So I was sitting at my chair in the living room and started writing that scene. And then I thought to myself, well, nobody just jumps off a deck and flies down the coast, which is what I was writing. They must know more about flying before they get to that point. So then I started flushing out the story.
Right.
And I found it absolutely fascinating. And I just kept going and going and going. And next thing you know, I had a book.
Wow. That's pretty organic.
It was very organic. It was also a mess. It needed a huge amount of rewriting. But that's the book that turned into Secret Sky in the end. And that scene that I wrote never did make it into the book.
Okay. So you wrote this, your first cut at a book. What was your next step?
Well, the next step was kind of gobsmacked, wondering what on earth I had done. And I kind of had a sense in my head that it was good. So my brother-in-law was an editor at a newspaper in Vancouver, and he did the book reviews.
Oh.
So I begged him to read it, and he was kind enough to read it. And he made a number of really good suggestions and encouraged me to have it edited. And so the first thing I did was I went to the Canadian Union, is it called the Union of Editors or the Association of Editors? And they have an option to do a manuscript evaluation. And so I sent it off for a manuscript evaluation. And they sent it to an editor, Nina Munteanu, who at that time was on the East Coast, but she is a writing coach. She also teaches writing at the University of Toronto and George Brown College.
Right.
And she was super, super helpful. She kind of took the whole manuscript and swaths of it, just redlined it, said delete, 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 and change this, move this here, make this character, remove this character. And she was just fantastic. So between her manuscript evaluation and later she did a more formal edit on it, I ended up with a book that was marketable. It's a fun story.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Yeah, we've had Nina on the podcast before, actually, as a guest too. So I know her fairly well, and I've seen her a couple of times at When Words Collide at the Writers' Convention that they have in Calgary every summer.
Wow. Well, you and I may have met because I've been there with her.
Oh, okay. Maybe I've seen your picture. I don't recognize you, but you must have been there because I've been there the last 4 or 5 years. So. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Small world,
definitely. Yeah, it sure is. It sure is.
Okay.
Sure is.
So now at this point, so you've got your book edited and that, and I assume this was a pretty intense crash course period of writing, learning writing skills for you.
Oh, it took a long time. That first book took a long time.
Okay. Like what, a year, 2?
No more than a year. It took about a year and a half or 2 years, from the time I started writing it till the time I ended up publishing it, for sure.
Okay. And now once you went through that process, how much of an eye opener was it for you in terms of when you look back at what you had first written and what you ended up with when you got your first book publishable?
Oh my goodness. Well, I learned how much I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the best way to put it. And it was, what I didn't know was huge. When I first started, even choosing the point of view that you're going to write the story from, you don't even realize the impact that has until you're finished.
All right.
Whether you write in first person or third person, and how that affects someone reading the story and how they enjoy the story. So that was a big learning curve. And then I'm not very technical. I mean, I can do Word on the computer. I use Word all the time, but in terms of having a Facebook presence and a Twitter presence and all of that, I just started Facebook when I had the book. I didn't even have an account before then. And then I thought, reading about author platforms, and then you have to have a Twitter. Well, you don't have to, but you try to get on other platforms. And so all of that was super, super confusing and new to me. And so when it came time to publish the book, I was too impatient to go the traditional route, but I also wasn't technically skilled enough to even consider putting it up myself. So I hired a company to do that part for me.
Okay.
So they got it out there. And then I did actually the first 4 books with them. 4 books or 3 books before I figured out how to do it myself.
Okay.
And then again, that was another learning curve. And once I learned how to do it myself, then I realized that I probably could have done it a lot sooner than I actually did.
Right.
So I ended up paying a lot more than I could have had I been smarter.
Okay.
More technical savvy.
Are you comfortable putting dollar amounts on any on your how much it cost you for your first couple of books, or is that something that you're?
Oh, sure. Yeah. No. I think it's important people know.
Yes, exactly. So how much did you spend on your first couple of books then?
The first book was by far the most expensive because of the company that I paid to put it out. So I think I paid about $1,800.
Okay.
And that was for them to create the files. So they created a cover, which I ended up not using and used my own cover. So I'll tell you that in a minute. I paid separately for that.
Okay.
So they created all of the covers with the artwork that I provided.
Mm-hmm.
And then they uploaded them to all the sites. They did all the interior formatting. So now you can get your interior file formatted for about $250.
Right.
Sometimes less than that. I now do my own, so it doesn't cost me anything.
Do you do it through Amazon or?
I use Word.
Okay.
Oh, I do now. They're up everywhere. They're up on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I use a company called Draft to Digital.
Okay. Yep.
And they put the books up on a number of, they're a distributor. But I put it up myself on Kobo because it's Canadian and it's easy to use.
Right.
And I put them up myself on Amazon because, again, they are pretty easy to use as well. And then Draft to Digital does the rest.
Right.
And then the paper books are done through Amazon as well and a company called Ingram Spark.
Okay.
But Ingram Spark and Amazon, they both use different file formats for their covers. So you have to have them done. They're two separate files.
Okay. And it's amazing, really, like how the publishing market has changed just like year to year in the last 5 years. It's quite a difference. And from the last decade, it's totally different. The move towards self-publishing and whatnot has been immense. And Amazon's become like the number one book retailer. So it's a new world with pluses and minuses because it's a lot easier to get published, but then there's a lot more people that are trying to get published too, so it's harder to stand out in a crowd.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so critically important, I think. If you're going to indie publish your book, you really do have to put out a good product because you're competing with all the traditionally published authors that have in-house editors and wonderful art people.
Yep.
So you really do have to spend some money, unless you're super good at it, to get that product to the level that it needs to be in order to garner any attention. And, we all, what they say about judging a book by its cover.
Yep.
and that's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
When I first put the books out, I had a very strong idea of what I wanted for a cover. And I ended up hiring a very talented graphic artist to do the covers. And I thought they were absolutely gorgeous and was getting great feedback about how beautiful they were and was so proud of them. And then I was selling books at our local market here on Denman, and a fella came up to me, and his wife had been by and bought one of the books. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, "I'm going to be very frank with you." And he said, and that's my name, because he was a funny guy.
Right.
He said, I thought you were selling religious material. And he said, "I've been avoiding your table for 2 weekends now because I thought you were selling religious material." And I looked at the covers from that perspective, and it wasn't the first time I had heard that, actually. So it was just a shock that somebody had said that they were avoiding me because of it. And when I looked at the covers and the original titles of these books, I realized that I had a problem. Because the original titles were Awakening, Revelation, Redemption, and Penance. In hindsight, it seems really clear. But, that's one of the mistakes you make when you're an indie and you're new at it. And I would imagine a traditional publisher probably wouldn't have made that mistake. So I fixed it.
Right.
And I got covers done by a professional cover designer called JD&J. And that cover that I now have on Secret Sky, which is the first book, it won the best cover in fantasy on Kobo the year it came out.
Oh, nice.
So I think getting new covers and new titles was a smart move.
Right.
It certainly made a big difference in the books.
Right. Yeah, I can. I'm looking at your book covers right now, and they are very striking. And I can see now, looking at them, that why the last book is a companion book, because it's a different character on the cover.
Yes.
That's very good. Okay. So how old is when did your first book come out? Sorry.
Originally, the first one, when it was called Awakening, came out in 2012.
Okay.
And it came out as Secret Sky in 2018.
All right. So now you're 7 books into your series. What are you? What's your skill set as a writer now as compared to what you were before? Are you a outliner? Are you a pantser? A bit of both?
Oh.
How do you make the magic happen?
Well, I'm now much more of an outliner, and I think part of the reason for that is it's a series, and you have to be pretty detail oriented when you're going from book to book. You have to remember, the distance between 2 places. You have to remember the layout of all these places. So you end up writing this stuff down, and then you think about larger story arcs, like the characters that go from book 1 through to book 6.
Mm-hmm.
You need to remember where they were, and you have to kind of have some idea where they're going if you want each book to have a complete story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up, the first one was completely organic, of course.
Right.
The second one started off organic, and I kept writing myself into corners. And so I started outlining, and now I pretty much outline, but I don't, like, if I'm writing and a scene comes to mind that doesn't follow the outline and it's really good, I'll stick with what I'm writing.
Sure.
And change the outline.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it sounds like you're strictly a word person.
Yeah, right now I am.
Yes.
Yeah, I tried. I did download Scrivener, and I tried it, but it was like I said, I'm not technically inclined, so it was a little bit difficult. I really like the what do you call them? The cue cards. I really like those.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so what's a regular work day for you? Are you get up and start writing in the morning kind of person, or do you have a word count that you don't care how you work as long as you hit it every day? What's your work schedule?
Yeah, I don't have a word count schedule. I have more of a scenes. I write scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I may decide I'm going to write the next scene the next day, and then if I'm lucky, I do the bridge as well to the next scene.
Okay.
And then I usually write in the mornings, and I try not to do anything, like not even listen to the news before I start writing, because that tends to stymie me for some reason. So I'll write first thing in the morning, and I won't even.
Especially this last year.
Oh my gosh, this has been quite a year, hasn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable.
I've lost track. Oh, my schedule. Yeah, I don't have a word count. I write scenes. I write first thing in the morning. Typically, I can also write very late at night. I find myself creative late at night for some reason. And I don't mix up my marketing type stuff with my writing stuff typically.
Okay. I don't know how much overlap you had with your books during their writing and publishing and that. Did you write at one time of day, and then if you had a book that was coming back for edits, did you do that like in the afternoon or whatever, or did that never overlap for you?
Oh, no, it did overlap. More so later, because I was getting quicker at writing later than, I think Secret Sky, I pretty much was finished the edit before I started writing the other book. But there was lots of overlap as I got towards the end. And I actually put the last 2 books, Deadly Deception and Wings of Prey, I put them out within a couple of months or even within 1 month of each other, because I knew it was going to end in Wings of Prey, and I didn't want to put Deadly Deception out before I knew exactly how all the storylines were going to tie up, because I knew I might need to go back and add something or change something in that 5th book. Yeah, I didn't do any editing.
I see.
When I'm writing, I don't do editing. I mean, I do, you change your sentence around to make it better, but I don't do any major editing. In the afternoon, I'll do that.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit now about the series. We're talking about your first book, Secret Sky, and you've sort of already laid out the genesis of where this came from with your dreams of flying and whatnot. Why don't you talk about your main character and what her story is all about?
Okay, alrighty. Secret Sky, as I said, is a supernatural thriller, urban fantasy. It's about a woman named Emmeline Taylor. She doesn't know she can fly until she falls from the sky. And that fall puts her in the hospital, where a doctor recognizes the second lens in her eyes that marks her as a flyer, one of them.
Okay.
The doctor puts her in the care of others who are like her, a group of flyers who call themselves a covey. And they're the ones that tell her about their secret world, and they teach her how to fly. And as wondrous as flying is, their secret world has a dark side. Of course it has a dark side. So Emmeline soon learns that her ability to fly marks them as targets for the military and organized crime who want to capture them and use their skills. So it's a matter of life and death that they keep their flying a deep, deep secret. That's why they only fly at night. It's why they train to fight with their fists and with guns. And there are some great battles that were lots of fun to write, both in the air and on the ground, as Emmeline learns how to fight. And then complicating matters, Emmeline falls for a handsome man, but she's blinded by her love and their steamy sex, and she doesn't see what he's hiding.
Okay.
And that whole idea, she doesn't see what he's hiding, that's what Lover Betrayed. That's what the companion book is about. And then more trouble is on the horizon because Emmeline doesn't yet know in Secret Sky, she doesn't yet know that her gift is special and her enemies are even more powerful than the military or organized crime.
Okay. And so what's the major arc then? Is it over the series? Is it her just helping people out, or does she have a goal, or does she have like a protagonist or an antagonist that she's dueling with throughout the series?
Yes. And in the first book, she doesn't quite know who that is, but she knows there's a shady something going on in the background. Okay. And for the first book, her antagonist really is learning how to fly. That's her biggest obstacle. Okay. And the gentleman that she connects with doesn't help matters at all. And then as we get through it, as the series develops, we realize, or we understand, that there is, first of all, one man who knows about her and is after her. She doesn't know why. And then she figures out that he's actually the head of a much larger group of people who are disgruntled with the way the Flyers are governed. And they are governed by a group called the Tribunal Novum, which is a group of 9 founding families that control them. So in the end, she's actually fighting. She starts off fighting for her friends, and in the end, she's actually fighting for all of them. Okay.
So is it fair to say then that the scope of the story opens up as the series progresses? I'm thinking one urban fantasy series in particular for me is like the Dresden Files, which of course, starts out very small, but now like it's at 15 or 19, I can't remember now, but I just read the latest 2 just came out this year. And so that's opened up quite a bit and pull in a lot of other magical characters and whatnot. Does that happen in your series, or is it just the Flyers? I'm surprised you didn't call it the Night Flyers series, but
oh, that's a good one. But, hey, that could be the title of another book in the series.
There you go. So does that happen in this world? Is there other? I don't know what I want to give. If you're giving away too many secrets, you can say that. But are there other supernatural beings in this series, or is it strictly the Flyers?
It's strictly the Flyers, but what happens is their supernatural abilities, like hers especially, develop. She doesn't know all that she has or all that she can do when it starts, so that part changes. But the other characters all have different skill sets. Okay. So like some of them can have telekinetic abilities, and some of them can mind read, and some of them can read memories. And so they have different skills. And it starts off, everything is set on the west coast of Canada. And then as the series expands, so does the location. So the last book, Wings of Prey, the cover of that book is a wine cave. And I actually took a trip down the coast, drove down the coast and found these wine caves in California, because I thought that would be a perfect place to set a pivotal scene in that book. So it does travel. The story travels down the coast as more and more characters are introduced. Okay,
very good. And did I understand correctly that is the series, the first 6 books, is that the complete main arc of the series?
It's complete, and it is the main arc. But I did leave a trapdoor or 2 in there that I could open to continue, but I really wanted to move on to write something else. So it is finished at this point, but there's a little room for some characters that weren't fully developed, and there's still room for some of that. So there could be another companion book or another book in the series. I don't know, but right now I'm just saying it's complete.
Okay. And what prompted you to write a companion book? Because that's That's an intriguing proposition that you've done there, because you don't see that very often, that you write the same story from another's perspective.
I had tons of fun doing it. The reason I did it was I'd written the first 4 books, and I wasn't sure where the rest of the series was going to go.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, I'm going to write Jackson's story. He's the guy, Emmeline's lover in the first book. And part of the reason I wrote that was because of the reaction I got from Secret Sky, the way that it ends. And I'm not going to give that away, but the way that it ends, some people let's just say it's not a romance. There's no happily ever after there for Emmeline. And so his story kind of begged to be told, like, why did he behave the way he did? And of course I knew, but people didn't know, the readers didn't know. And so I actually took Secret Sky, I took the manuscript, and I stripped everything out of that manuscript that wasn't a scene between those 2 characters, or dialogue between those 2 characters. And then I built the story back out from his perspective. And that was a ton of fun, because it's amazing how you can misconstrue what somebody else is saying. And I took every opportunity to misconstrue when I wrote that book. Wow. So it was a lot of fun to write. It was also the first book that I wrote from a male perspective. And that also was a learning experience, because men and women do differ quite a bit in how they see things and how they react to things.
So I've heard.
I've heard. My husband had fun with that one.
I bet. I'm curious then, if you were to suggest a reading order, would you say to read Lover Betrayed after Secret Sky, or wait till you've read the first 6 books, or that doesn't matter?
I don't think it matters. I think if you finish Secret Sky and you're dying to know what on earth was going on with Jackson, then certainly read that one next. Okay. But yeah, it doesn't matter. Secret Sky, though, I think it would be the first. If you read Lover Betrayed first, it'll spoil Secret Sky for you. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So where do things stand for you now? What are you working on now?
Ooh, I have a brand new book written. It's called Bloodmark. Okay. And I'm going to. This is my elevator pitch for Bloodmark. Okay. So a young woman who bears a chain of scarlet birthmarks is thrilled when one by one the disfiguring marks begin to disappear, until she learns that the hated marks protect her from a mysterious and homicidal enemy. Now she's in a race against time to find this dangerous enemy before her last mark vanishes.
Ooh, wow. And that's
called Bloodmark.
That's a nice pitch. That's very intriguing. Oh, yeah, good. The disappearing marks, are they birthmarks or birthmarks? Okay.
Well, that's what she thinks they are. That's what she thinks they are. That's what she's been told they are. Okay. But with this book, I am actually looking for an agent, and I just want to see if the grass is indeed any greener on the traditional publishing side of things.
Well, yeah, sure. Can't hurt.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and so you've got this already done.
Yes, it's done. It's out there. I've sent it out to agents, and I've got one agent that is interested, but I haven't heard back. So,
right.
So yeah, I'm hoping I will.
Right. And so, what are you doing now? Are you writing book 2 in that series, or is it a one and done book?
No, there's room for a series for sure. And I'm just writing ideas down right now. Not really outlining, just writing ideas down for the next book. But what I'm trying to do now is write some short stories, because I give short stories away for free for people who sign up for my newsletter. Okay. And I haven't written a new one for a while now. So I think I've got, I don't even keep track of them. I've got 4 or 5 that people get when they sign up. Right. So I'm just trying to fill up my short story collections. Okay. And it also, I find writing short stories is a real challenge. Mm-hmm. I'm much better at the long form than short form, but I think there's lots to learn about writing short stories. Right. And being more concise in the writing in a short story. Sure. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. Well, I wish you all the best with your finding a home for your new book. And it looks like you've got a nice series going here. And I have to ask writers, because we touched on it briefly at the beginning, with the crazy last year that we've had with the political situation in the States and the world, I guess, in general, with the rise of populism and whatnot, and of course, COVID. How has that, or has it affected your ability to write and what you write about? I wouldn't say it affects what I write about, although I have thought about whether to put COVID in any of the short stories I'm writing, but it has affected my creativity. Like I do find myself, because it occupies so much of my head,
right?
The political situation and the COVID, it does stymie the creativity for sure. I have noticed that. But in terms of isolation, I mean, we live on a small island, and we're in it's rural here.
Right.
I mean, in terms of that, I mean, yeah, we haven't been able to go out for dinner and meet up with our friends as we used to, but
right.
we still go for walks outside and see the neighbors and wave at them.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay. I was just curious because everybody reacts to it differently. And interestingly enough, I remember just reading a newsletter from David Farland, who does Writers of the Future contest. And he was talking about how book sales are actually up in the past year because people are staying at home. And it's actually a really good time for writers to be having stuff out there. So there's that, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
There's that.
Yeah. No, I think so.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that hasn't come up during the interview that you would like to mention at this point?
Yeah. People can contact me through my website, jpmcleanauthor.com. Sign up for my newsletter, get some free short stories.
Cool.
You can also find me on Twitter at Joanne or at JP McLean Author, and on Facebook I'm at JP McLean Books.
All right, very good. Well, I hope that if this COVID thing ever clears up and we get to go back to conventions and stuff like that, then we'll connect up maybe at the next When Words Collide in Calgary.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love that.
All right. Well, I thank you very much for coming on and doing this interview, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Lou, very much. Nice to be here.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Enjoy your island.
You too. Bye now. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.